Hey, what is up guys, Murgaman4 here, and after a year-long wait, Doctor Who is finally back, and wow did it come back with a bang. So yeah, today I'm going to be giving you my thoughts and opinions on the Series 12 two-part premiere, Spyfall. There is quite a lot to talk about this. I've decided to review both parts of Spyfall together as an overall story. I'm probably going to do that as well for the finale, mainly just for consistency, because we know the finale is also a two-parter. In the past, I've reviewed the episodes individually, because usually what I do is I watch each episode twice before I review it, the day of broadcast and the day after. And then I don't, even if it's a multi-part story, I don't tend to watch them together during the broadcast of the season. But this time, it was somewhat of a unique situation. First off, because these two parts only aired half a week apart instead of a whole week apart, but also because I got the opportunity to go and see both parts of Spyfall at the movie theater, which was an awesome experience. I did see Spyfall Part 1 on the day of broadcast on January 1st because I was just too excited for it, and also I knew there was no way I could avoid spoilers for it if I just waited. But I knew I was going to be watching the whole story together anyway, so when I went to see it at the theater, that was acting as my second time seeing Spyfall Part 1, and then Spyfall Part 2 I watched for the first time in the theater, the second time the day after. But I did get to see both parts individually, but also as one whole story. So I'm probably not going to be talking about them as individual parts. I will give a score for the individual parts, but I'll mainly be focusing on it as a story as a whole. So I guess probably the big thing to talk about before we get into like the big twists is this story's riff on, James Bond, on spies. I mean, it's right there in the title. And I think some people thought it was probably too much on the nose from what I saw, but me personally, I really enjoyed that. I think it's really fun when Doctor Who does riffs on different kinds of genres and kind of plays with that a bit. And honestly, I mean, there's a stronger focus on the spy aspect in Part 1. It is somewhat there in Part 2, but not nearly as much. It's mainly just with the companions, which is the B story. But in Part 1, I had so much fun with that aspect of it. You've got some great action sequences, like with the car chase, or when they're chasing after the plane near the end. You've got the shock of the head of MI6, C, getting killed pretty much near the beginning. And I do want to say, Stephen Fry was great in the role. I was really happy that he finally got to star in Doctor Who. But yeah, I'm really glad Stephen Fry was in this. I'm of kind of two minds about it because, well, here's the thing. It's a real shame that his role was as small as it was, because he's a great actor and he was perfect for the role of C. He was great in it. And honestly, when he first got killed, my first thoughts were that it was actually just going to be a deception and he's going to come back later. Maybe he's going to be the big main villain, which didn't turn out to be the case. So I was sort of disappointed in that regard, that as much as I enjoyed him, he was barely in it. But at the same time, I can't say that he was wasted, because as I said, he was perfect for that role. I'm disappointed that Stephen Fry didn't play a bigger role, but at the same time, I'm really glad with how it played out. One of the other things that I loved as well was the score for these two episodes were superb. There's some great James Bondy sounding music in Part 1 especially. I love the, I guess I'm going to say Bondified version of the Team TARDIS theme. It was just absolutely fantastic, and it just put a huge grin on my face. But yeah, the spy aspect of it, it's not hugely important, but it's just something that was really fun, and I'm glad that they did it, because it's just a really good time. you know? I think another important thing about this is this story does seem to be answering a lot of the criticisms from Series 11, and I think in part some of the things that are going on here were always planned to happen. I think the more heavy continuity related stuff, which I'll get into later, was part of the plan from the beginning. I don't think that was a backtrack, but I think perhaps some of the stuff like the character work with the companions, I think that was more of a reaction to the general reception of Series 11, as well as them, especially them asking questions about who the Doctor is, because I think that was one of the biggest complaints I saw about Series 11, is that they never asked the Doctor who she is, where she's from. Personally, that never bothered me, but I can see why it would bother other people, and that does get brought up here. Although I will say it did seem somewhat clunky. I think I can tell that this was a reaction because Graham brings up a couple of times that they have asked the Doctor about this stuff, and she just brushes it off. But of course, they never did on screen, so I think that's just kind of a retcon that, you know, they did actually ask her that stuff, we just didn't see it. But whatever, I don't really mind it that way. But I did really enjoy the companions. I do appreciate that I think some more work has been put into the characters, especially with Yaz. She feels like this is perhaps one of the stories where she plays the biggest role. I thought it was especially great when she was transported to that otherworldly plane and it kind of traumatized her. That really helps you attach to the character and feel for her more, which, I mean, in Series 11, I did enjoy all the companions, but Yaz was always to the sideline, and I never really felt any sort of caring towards her during Series 11. Here, this did make me care about her more, and there was a nice moment as well with Ryan, where he tells her, like, he's never going to let anything like that happen to her again. Ryan and Graham, as always, are wonderful. Graham he remains one of my favorite aspects of the Chibnall era so far. He's just a ton of fun. In part 2, him in the laser shoes, it's really fun. Like I said with a lot of the other spy stuff, it's just really fun. It is the most ridiculous aspect of this story, and I don't entirely buy it because it is a little bit too ridiculous, I think, but it was still enjoyable. The way that Bradley Walsh just plays it, honestly, I think if he was played by somebody else, I don't think they could get away with it. I think the only reason they get away with the laser shoes is that it's Bradley Walsh, because he's just flat out fantastic. But here we go. We got a real big twist in this story, in that the Master is back. I was not expecting the character to return so soon. I always knew the Master was going to come back. There's no way they were going to stay dead after the events of the Series 10 finale. I know some people expected Missy to like stay dead, and I mean, it's technically not confirmed that this new incarnation is after Missy, but it is pretty heavily implied. I think you can easily assume that. And to be honest, I never expected Missy to be the final incarnation anyway. No matter how many times the Master is killed, they always come back. So while I may not have expected the Master to return so soon, it's literally just been, what, 12 episodes, I think? But I quite frankly, I think you're pretty daft if you thought that the Master was never going to come back again. On that note as well, I've seen a lot of people complaining that it completely diminishes Missy's arc and makes it completely pointless. I can't say I agree with that, because they're different incarnations, and with different incarnations comes different personalities, different arcs. I could totally see, after the events of The Doctor Falls, Missy has somehow survived. I don't care how she survives. The Master always survives. At this point, I don't need an explanation for that character. But I could see how she survives. She regenerates, and her new incarnation sees things differently. He might see how he had turned good and tried to help the Doctor. What ended up happening to him as a result of that was being stranded on this ship as it got exploded and being killed by his former self. And he saw where that got him and saw that it was a really bad place, and decided, no, that's not worth it to be good. So I think that's part of it as well. I think that, well, that's just my kind of internal justification for it, because the different incarnations have their own different kinds of feelings, and their own different kinds of arcs. For me, Missy's arc remains intact because it's specific to that incarnation of the Master, in my interpretation of it anyway. Although, the other thing as well, Spyfall Part 2, in something else I'll get into later, it kind of gives another possible reason for why the Master has reverted to being a bad guy again after Missy's arc. One that I think provides even more of a justification than regeneration, and perhaps it's in tandem with that as well, that actually causes him to go bad again. But anyway, all that nonsense aside, what a reveal! That was amazing! Honestly, I think aside from the initial Master reveal way back in 2007, this is easily the best reveal or twist or whatever that the show has had since it came back. I think the problem with past Master reveals, for example, well, Sin's return in the Series 10 finale was obviously spoiled by the BBC. If it hadn't been spoiled, that would have been an amazing reveal as well. Missy's wasn't spoiled, but I think the problem with that one was it was built up throughout the entire season, so you're asking, who is Missy? And they're not going to build it up if it's not going to be an important character, and the Master is the only character that's really worth building up that much, to be honest. If it's the Ranny, why does she need that much build up? You know, like, the Master's the only one that justifies that kind of build up, so while it was exciting, it was a good reveal, an exciting reveal, it wasn't a shocking twist. With this, we're given this character, former employee of MI6, and you can see little hints watching it back that he is actually the Master, which is really great, but you have no reason to suspect him. You're not asking who is O, and that's why the twist lands so well, because you're completely diverted into thinking he is someone that he isn't. You think of him as O, you're not thinking of him as this mysterious figure. So that's what makes the twist land so well. Unfortunately for me, I do frequent certain fan forums, and months ago, I saw rumors that Sacha Dhawan was going to be in this season as the Master. There was no evidence to back up this rumor, so honestly, I didn't believe it. Unlike other rumors for the season, like for example, like with the Cybermen, they were seen in set photos and then sure enough they appeared in the trailer. But this reveal, this character's reappearance, had no evidence to back it up. So going into this episode, as soon as we came upon Sacha Dhawan's character, technically I didn't know he was going to be the Master, but I had a suspicion the whole time because I had that kind of forewarning. And I was able to pick up on a couple of hints where I was thinking, well, then it's going to be really disappointing if, you know, there's this stuff and he doesn't turn out to be the Master. But the main thing was that in the cast list, Sacha Dhawan was not listed at all. So it was a surprise that Sacha Dhawan was in it at all, let alone playing the Master. So that kind of made me suspicious as well. If I hadn't have seen that rumor, it already would have made me suspicious that he wasn't in the cast list. Either way, it still played so well, and it was just such a good surprise that it did still shock me, even though I pretty much knew it was coming, essentially. Oh, and can I also talk about Sega Nakanola's new theme for the Master? It is just beautiful. I think it's possibly my favorite Sega Nakanola track so far. It's definitely my favorite Master theme that we've had. It is just superb. And the music for the whole reveal scene and the cliffhanger, oh, it was perfect. But yeah, like I mentioned, there were a couple of really great hints I want to mention, such as when the Doctor and Graham first arrive at O's hut. They go in before him, and you see him give a little satisfied smile as he looks back to the TARDIS. There's the more obvious one as well, where he's kind of probing Graham about how much he knows about the Doctor. Just the way that he asks it, I don't know, something just sounds off. It doesn't sound innocent, like O would have asked it if he was actually O. But the other thing as well, when he tries to tempt Graham with information about the Doctor, saying he has like a shelf, he just has this look, like this eager look, like he's just ready for Graham to become suspicious of the Doctor and potentially turn against her. It's just little hints like that play off so well. But yeah, the episode ended on a massive cliffhanger, because not only do you have the Master's reveal, but they're in a crashing plane, and the Doctor gets transported into this who knows where. And honestly, it's one of the best cliffhangers in ages. I mean, it's got a lot going on, and it's so well paced, and it's just a superb cliffhanger all around. And I'm really glad that I did watch it on January 1st instead of waiting, because even if I had managed to avoid the spoilers, I'm really glad I had the effect of the cliffhanger. And I will say I did watch that master reveal / cliffhanger probably about 50 times in between it first airing and me seeing it at the theater again, because it was just so good. Now, part 2 is a pretty different beast. It's got this different feel to it. By part 2, you have the Doctor separated from her companions, and she's kind of going to a couple different points in history as the Master chases after her, which I thought was really neat. And it kind of reminded me of a modernized version of The Chase, but with the Master instead of Daleks. And I think it's appropriate for me to here say that Sacha Dhawan just killed it as the Master. He was absolutely superb. And to be honest, I think he's easily my favorite Master since Delgado. He's just such a good performance. And there's just so many layers to his Master as well. You feel the pain that he's in. He's just got this, he's probably the most emotional Master we've gotten. He's just got this underlying seething anger, and he's very prone to these quick emotional outbursts. It's just a fascinating examination of the Master, this broken man. He and the Doctor have some amazing scenes together. I also want to mention too, Chris Chibnall brought back 2 elements from the classic series that haven't been seen since the 1980s, which I thought was amazing. He brought back the tissue compression eliminator, which was the Master's main weapon in the classic series, although thankfully they changed the design of it, but that was pretty cool. And 2, they also brought back the Time Lord telepathic contact, which has previously been used in multi-Doctor stories for the Doctor to telepathically communicate with his other selves.
Contact.
I thought that was awesome. It really just shines through how much of a fan Chibnall is, because even Moffat didn't bring back those kinds of elements. And he was like the ultimate throw in anything from continuity kind of person. So I thought that was really cool, and they were implemented into the story in a neat way. Oh, another thing about this Master too is he kind of talks about how when he kills, it just makes him feel right. And he just gets really excited about it. There's a couple of neat moments where he just kind of gets really excitable about it, and then he like catches himself. And it's just a subtle detail. I'm not sure whether that was in the script or if it was either a directorial choice or Sacha Dhawan who chose to do that. Whoever it was, it's a great little detail that really adds some more depth to him and makes him feel a lot more complex and more like a real character. It was also great seeing the Master showing up in different time periods following the Doctor, especially in World War II when he shows up as a Nazi. That was pretty surprising, and the Doctor even mentions that's a low even for him. There's just this one shot where he first shows up as this Nazi commander. It's a fantastic shot. I don't know, I just wanted to mention that. He just gives me very classic Master vibe. I mean, he's got kind of the craziness of John Sim, but I feel like this is a more restrained craziness. Like, with both John Sim and Missy, I feel like their craziness was more just unleashed. It was just spur of the moment craziness. But with this Master, I feel like it's a more subdued insanity, I guess. Like, he's certainly a crazier Master than most of the classic ones, but he's also got this refined aspect to him, I feel. And just some of the things, tissue compression eliminator, contact, but also him showing up in these different disguises and outfits, that feels so classic Master. So that was really fun to see as well. We have a scene on top of the Eiffel Tower where this is the first real time that the Master and the Doctor can have a proper conversation with each other. And this is where the Master drops a big bombshell. Like, Gallifrey is destroyed. And I'll admit, I thought he was lying. And even if he wasn't, I didn't expect to get an answer to if he was or not in this episode. Now, while I may have had an inkling about the Master coming back, I had no clue about Gallifrey coming back. So this was a real proper surprise for me. Because at the end of the episode, the Doctor goes to Gallifrey, where she hasn't been since Hellbent, and it's demolished. Absolutely demolished. And I'm in two minds about this. First off, well, here's the thing. If we're just talking about it in the context of this story, if we're thinking about it individually, this is a great twist. It is just wow. But if you're thinking about it in the context of the series as a whole, mainly the new series, of course, it is somewhat repetitive. I will admit my first proper thought after, the shock of it was, they destroyed Gallifrey again? Because here's the thing, it was destroyed when the series came back in 2005, and then they brought Gallifrey back. Moffat didn't do anything with Gallifrey, and now it's destroyed again. So it just feels kind of repetitive. It makes Gallifrey coming back ultimately pointless. Unless they do something that kind of justifies it, I don't know. We'll see where they go with that storyline, but I like this storyline. I like how it was done individually, just in the context of Gallifrey already being destroyed and coming back. That's where I have my concerns about it, because it does feel kind of repetitive. And I'm not sure entirely yet how I feel about it, but it did make for a really shocking visual moment as well. And then where the Master pops up as a hologram telling the Doctor what happened. This is quite possibly the best acted scene Jodie Whittaker has had, but the Master reveals that it was he who destroyed Gallifrey, and it was because the Time Lords, the whole Time Lord civilization was built on a lie, the lie of the timeless child. Now, this is something that I definitely think was planned out by Chris Chibnall. Obviously, because he mentioned it in Series 11. A lot of people thought, for some reason, that the Timeless Child was just going to be a throwaway line. I don't know why. That's a pointless thing to have as a throwaway line. It's a reference to something that hasn't happened and isn't going to happen and sounds important. They're not going to do that. Obviously, it was meant to be important, so obviously it was going to come back. So that doesn't surprise me that it's related to the Timeless Child. I do have my concerns about this, though, because I am not the biggest fan of retconning established mythology. I'm alright, generally, when it comes to adding to the mythology, but changing things that we already know, that's where I start to become a little bit more concerned. My main worry is that this is just going to be a change for change's sake. You know, a twist just for the sake of having a twist. Stephen Moffat sometimes did this. This sounds like something Stephen Moffat would do, change the entire backstory of the Time Lords. So this has a lot of potential to either be absolutely brilliant or absolutely terrible. I don't think there's much room for in between, because this is a massive thing. And, I mean, again, like with Gallifrey, we're just going to have to wait and see. So I hope it turns out well. But I will not be pleased if it's just some random stupid thing where it's like, oh, the Time Lords actually came from humans. Or something stupid like that. Like, it better be something actually worth telling. Or it better not be something like Moffat's hybrid arc, where it's like, oh, the Doctor ran away from Gallifrey because of this thing that was prophesized that never actually existed. As long as it doesn't change established history just for the sake of it, I can accept it even if I don't like it. But, yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. We might not even get an answer to it in Series 12. Hopefully we will, but we might not. This also felt like a bit of whiplash from Series 11, because Series 11 had next to no continuity in it. It had a couple references here and there, but pretty much everything was new, which I personally found very refreshing. I was glad they did that. I didn't want all the old stuff to disappear forever, but I thought it was nice for once to have pretty much all new stuff. And then I was thinking, okay, we'll gradually get some more old stuff. We have the Dalek and Resolution. After watching part 1, I'm like, oh, okay, cool, we have the Master now. I thought it was going to be more gradual. Part 2? Chibnall went from 0 continuity to maximum continuity by suggesting a potential change that could be one of the biggest retcons in the entire show's history and potentially change one of the most well-established things in the show. That is shocking, and regardless of where it ends up, as a whole, that is quite a jump to make. I thought it was going to be much more gradual than this. So that felt kind of awkward to me, especially with near the end as well, when the companions are learning more about the Doctor. It's all just coming out at once. I don't know, it didn't feel as gradual as I would have liked, but oh well. That's kind of as well how I feel like that was more of a reaction rather than a plan. I don't think that this was all supposed to happen so quickly, but it was in a reaction to the response to Series 11, which I think is kind of a shame. Because, as I've very well established in my other videos on my channel, I enjoyed Series 11. I don't think it's nearly as bad as everyone else says it is. One thing I can't deny is that this is a step up, because Series 11 did have problems. I liked it, but it had issues. And Spyfall definitely goes up from there. I just realized one of the things I haven't mentioned yet, and it's a big thing, is our main villains other than the Master. You have Daniel Barton, played by Sir Lenny Henry, and he was great as well. There's this awesome scene in part 1 where the Doctor confronts him at his birthday party, and he really just portrays this underlying menace really well. He's not as prominent in part 2, but he's also good in that as well, and he does feel like a proper villain. I am wondering if he's going to return though, because he does just kind of disappear at the end, and that feels kind of weird. I think that happened a decent amount in Series 11 too. We'll see if he comes back. His story doesn't quite feel complete. But as well, we've also got, I think they're called the Kasavan, which are a really interesting race as well. They're these creatures from another dimension that can kind of like go through walls and stuff. And they don't ultimately do too much, but they're a neat threat. They feel proper scary, and you really feel like they can do some damage. Like they're not just kind of sitting there in the background. They are actual threats. So they were cool as well. I also liked actually that the Kasavan actually are the first time in the new series, I believe, that the Master has actually teamed up with a new alien race. In the new series before, it's either been with a pre-established thing like the Cybermen, or in the case of the Series 3 finale, it was a race that he created. So this is another classic Master kind of feeling thing, where he teams up with a completely different alien race, and then he actually gets what's coming to him when that race betrays him, because the Doctor reveals to the Kasavan that he was going to betray them. So then they turn on him and send him to that mysterious plane. That felt very classic as well. Also, another classic thing. Wow, Chibnall really went full-on classic with this Master, and the more I think about it, the more I love it. This is the first time that the Master's TARDIS appeared in the show since the 1980s, which was pretty cool as well. That's like 3 different things that haven't appeared since the 80s that Chibnall's just brought back. That's some good stuff. They're good stuff. I like that. That's really cool. I'm glad he did that. I will admit, I think that the ending was dealt with a little bit too nonchalantly, I guess. I liked what happened with the Master, but I think stopping the Kasavan was perhaps a bit too easy. But to be honest, I don't mind too much. It still made sense, and the story was already pretty packed with stuff anyway, and I wouldn't want to lose any of the other stuff we already had. Especially the stuff between the Doctor and the Master. That was the most important stuff to get, and I loved all that stuff. But yeah, that Spyfall was a fantastic opener, and I think I very confidently say that was the best Jodie Whittaker and best Chris Chibnall story so far, without a doubt. It was great. I think I did enjoy part 1 slightly more than part 2. Now, part 2 had all the awesome Master scenes, except for, the reveal in part 1. But I think part 1 just kind of flowed a bit better. And as well, I did have a lot of fun with the spy stuff that happened in part 1, which wasn't as much going on in part 2. I think the main problem for me with part 2, it would have been elevated to the same level as part 1 for me if it was all as seamlessly put together, I guess. Because my main problem is, I think generally the time jumping between time periods worked well, although sometimes it could feel a little bit disjointed, but mainly just the companion stuff going on with it, the Doctor. I don't know, it just didn't gel as well, I feel. And I don't think either the Kasavan or Daniel Barton, I don't think either of them were utilized as well in the second part either. But that's fine, because the Master was friggin' amazing. And I'm so glad that he's back. It may be a little bit too soon for my liking, but I don't care, because Sacha Dhawan is such perfect casting. He is amazing, and it really feels like there's some unfinished business between him and 13 at the moment. This doesn't feel like the complete story. I'm willing to bet he's coming back before the end of the series, probably in the finale. And I really hope he does, because I definitely want to see more of him. And I'm really excited too when that happens. It better happen, Chibnall. This better not be his only appearance. So I think probably part 1 I'd give a 9 out of 10, part 2 an 8.5 out of 10, and together as a story, that's probably going to be a 9 out of 10. I think they work better as a whole than 2 parts. I think there's enough good in part 1 as well as part 2 to justify bringing the story up to a 9 total rather than down to an 8.5. So, yeah. I think in terms of premieres and counting 2-part premieres as one story instead of just using part 1, Spyfall is probably my 3rd favorite premiere after the 11th Hour and the Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. So yeah, not bad at all. That was really good. Now, we'll see how the rest of the season goes. Currently, obviously from just one story, but still, its average is 9 out of 10. We'll see how the rest of the season goes, but I've got high hopes for Series 12. This was an absolute banger to start with. I mean, this would usually be finale material, so it was pretty great to actually have something like this happen in the premiere. Because actually, now I think about it, we've never had such a big shock like that in a premiere before. That kind of thing is always reserved for finales, so that was great to start a season like this. But, yeah, that was great. I'm loving Sacha Dhawan's Master. I'm loving the improvements that Chibnall has implemented. This is a great start to Series 12, and I am incredibly optimistic as to what is coming next. I'm really excited. But, yeah, that's my thoughts and opinions on Spyfall. Please put your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will see you next week with Orphan 55.